Hello viewers and welcome back to McElroy's Motors, the home of the weird, the boring, the projects, and the adventures. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. In today's video, I am going to be discussing some future plans with my 1997 Saturn SL1, as well as telling you guys some good news because I finally figured out what is causing my wiper issues. Time now to cue the music. If you guys have been following my YouTube channel or you guys are new to the channel, this is Sadie, my 1997 Saturn SL1, a car I've driven daily since October of 2024, covering nearly 40,000 miles. But since the start of this year, I've had nothing but wiper troubles pretty much since the year started. I have since replaced the multi-function switch because the one that was in the car was showing signs of going bad. The shop I took it to in Ravenna, Ohio, basically told me that the switch itself is defective, which it turns out it wasn't. And I've since replaced all the relays inside the car to find out that it's not the switch or the relays, but more so the wiper motor. So that was a bit frustrating, but at least I have a new wiper motor coming, and it's only going to cost me about $75. Since replacing the fender about 2 weeks ago, I can honestly say that the fender itself is holding up quite well. But the only downside to this is the crack of the windshield has gotten worse. As you can see, it has now spread out to be about a third of the way across. When I first got the crack of the windshield, it was basically down in this corner here. So after I come back from Saturn Nationals in May, I definitely plan on fixing that windshield because that is not only a safety concern, but in the state of Virginia, where the Trabant owners meet for the annual Trabant parade down in Washington, D.C., you cannot drive a car with a crack of the windshield within your line of sight. Now you guys might be wondering what exactly is causing my wiper issue at hand. Well, I will gladly tell you. It's not the wiper motor itself that's gone bad, it's the park sensor that is inside the motor that has gone bad. So I do have to replace the motor itself because I'm just going to go ahead and do that because who knows if the wiper motor itself is showing signs of going bad. According to my multimeter, the wiper motor was starting to go bad back in November, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I didn't want to spend the time to go inside the dash and undo all those bolts and stuff like that. But on the bright side is it lasted all the way through November with a 2,800 mile road trip we took. It lasted all the way through winter, and now here we are at the start of spring, and therefore the weather is starting to lighten up a bit. But at the same time, it was a pain in the ass to get everything replaced because I replaced the switch twice, spent $300 doing that. I replaced all the relays and fuses, that cost me another $100, just to find out that was not my problem. However, there's one thing I do have to get done though, and that is I do have to replace the serpentine belt. If you guys recall my last video when the tree actually fell on the car and the water pump gave out that same day, when the water pump itself gave out, it kind of stretched out my serpentine belt, and I definitely want to get that replaced because I don't think it's ever been replaced in this car's life. It hasn't been replaced since I've owned it, and I think with this car coming up on 100,000 miles now, I do want to make sure that everything works because I don't think anybody wants their power steering, alternator, air conditioner, compressor, and all that is interior electrical gubbins to stop working all of a sudden. Before the tree fell on the car, I did have someone perform a hit and run on me and took out my passenger's side mirror. I have since gotten that replaced, and it was relatively easy to do. It only took me about 10 minutes. The only downside is I could only find a mirror that was manually adjustable as opposed to being electrically adjustable, which is no big deal because this car is sold, and parts for this car, even though they're still relatively cheap and affordable, you have to get what you can get. And the same applies to when the tree fell on the car, because now I'm driving around with a driver's side front fender that does not match the rest of the car. But that being said, I am thinking about wrapping this car to make it all one color again. Now the reason why I'm thinking about wrapping it is because I don't want to make it too well known that this car survived a tree falling on it, even though that is partially the name of the game here. I will say though, hand on heart, that this car has proven to be the most reliable little car I had ever owned. And bear in mind, this car is 30 years old. And what makes it even more crazy is the fact that Saturn as a brand doesn't exist anymore. So I was really taking a huge gamble by buying this car almost 2 years ago. So if you go down to Scotty Kilmer's video and he says that all Saturns are garbage, don't listen to him because these Saturns are fantastic cars as long as you keep the oil topped up. But even so, after covering nearly 40,000 miles on this car, I have not had to keep the oil up because this thing doesn't burn any. The only thing I had to do was change it every 3,000 miles. I could definitely tell that this little car definitely wants to do more adventures in the future, and that is one reason why I want to take it on a gargantuan cross-country road trip next year, because I feel like this car can handle it. But the only thing is, with this car being 30 years old, who knows if it will survive or not, because we're going to be going higher in altitude than this car has ever been before. With my front yard looking like something you would see in a lumber yard, it is definitely not a pretty sight, but it is completely surprising my grandfather just how reliable this Saturn has been. What is even more amazing is even after the tree fell on the car, the headlights still work perfectly fine. But one thing is for certain, with the whole world being the way it is right now, especially given the fact that the United States is currently at war with the country of Iran at the moment, I know that driving down to Washington, D.C. this year won't be the easiest task, especially with gas approaching $4 a gallon in Ohio alone. When I was down in Washington, D.C. earlier this year, just driving through, gas was about $4.15 a gallon. So filling up this car in Washington, D.C. will cost me about $50. But on the bright side is it still gets really good gas mileage, approaching 40 miles per gallon if I drive it hard enough. But if I keep the weight down and keep my throttle nice and light, I can achieve almost 60 miles per gallon, which is incredible given the fact that this thing is not a hybrid or indeed an electric car. It has been well over a year since I put new tires on this car, and these were just cheap off-the-shelf tires from Walmart, and they cost me about $250 a set. And for how much mileage I've been putting on them and rotating them about 2 to 3 times since I had them replaced, they're actually holding up relatively well. They're not getting any punctures, they're not leaking, they're not showing any signs of disrepair, and I'm just really happy with these tires. It just shows that Walmart, despite having some brands that I've never actually heard of before, they actually do know a thing or two about tires. These tires here are Ironman branded, and I never heard of Ironman before until I bought these, but they're actually holding up pretty well, and I've covered about 30,000 miles in them so far, and they should be good for another 35,000 miles. So before I do go on that massive road trip for 2027, I definitely want to replace the tires, but they're holding up really well so far, so I cannot complain. With all that being said though, one thing that is completely shocking to me is the fact that the car's check engine light has only been on twice since I've owned it. And it wasn't really to any fault of my own. If you guys remember when I replaced the spark plugs and one of the spark plugs split in half on me, I had the car towed to a shop so they can fix the job for me because I didn't have the right tools. They drove the car into the shop, triggering the check engine light for a misfire, and the second time the check engine light was on was when I seafoamed it with Joseph down in South Carolina. So even then, it wasn't on while I was driving or causing me any future codes. I even hooked up my OBD2 scanner to the car, and there are no hidden codes at all. So for a car that covered nearly 40,000 miles without any check engine light whilst on the road is simply incredible for a car this age. Compare that to my grandfather's 2016 Jeep Compass, and the check engine light has been on for the 6th time this year alone. Hi, I'm the same guy in a different spot. As you guys can see, I do have a piece of my Saturn's original front fender here, signed and ready to go. All you have to do to win this is become my 1,000th subscriber, and this thing will be issued to you by the mail. Anyway, let's get back to the car. As you guys can hear, this thing runs and drives still perfectly sweetly, which is a surprise given the fact that it does need a new serpentine belt. It doesn't chirp, it doesn't squeak, it doesn't make any unusual noises. Unlike the time when the water pump did fail and completely bathed the belt in coolant, this thing still runs and drives perfectly fine. But that being said though, I do not drive the car long distance because of the fact that it does need a serpentine belt. So I basically been driving it to and from work, and that's pretty much it. But I do know that replacing the serpentine belt, replacing the wiper motor, all this stuff is not going to be exactly cheap, but it's going to be money well spent, especially with the windshield needing replaced as well. I think the windshield itself is going to cost me like $300 to replace. Replacing the serpentine belt could probably cost me upwards of $200, and then getting the wiper motor done is going to probably cost me another $200. That is if I don't do it myself. But on the bright side, that's the only thing that this car really needs. And after covering almost 18 months of nothing but abuse, going through 40,000 miles of adventures, car shows, car meets, and all that stuff, this thing has been absolutely effortless to own. And I'm still very proud of it, despite this car looking like it just came out of a junkyard. I know this car still has plenty of life left in it, despite it looking like that. It's overall still a very fun car to live with. Still gets up hills perfectly fine too. Eventually! Come on! There we go. Keep in mind, this is a 100 horsepower car. Whee! So to briefly summarize here, I think it is fair to say that my 1997 Saturn SL1 has become a bit of a project. I have to make this fender or wing match the rest of the body. I have to fix the windshield because Mother Nature decided to become Twisted Sister. And above all else, I have to replace the wiper motor as well as the serpentine belt. Now for the serpentine belt, I could probably just replace it here. Won't take me that long to do. Probably take me about an hour, all said and done. The windshield, I might have to have my glass coverage cover that, but I do have a secondary plan for that. And that is, I do have a friend of mine in Illinois who's willing to sell me a windshield for this car for 30 bucks. Besides, I have to go to Illinois anyways after Saturn Nationals to pick up a digital camera. As for the shock absorbers, I'm going to just take the car to a shop because I don't have the right presses to take out the old shocks. And I think also what I'm also going to do is when it comes time to replace the wiper motor, I'm going to just take it to a shop because I'm about as scared, well, I'm about as good as replacing automotive electrical items as Donald Trump is at being good of a president. So that being said though, I am a little nervous about spending all this money to get this car back up to snuff again, mainly because this car is 30 years old, it's not worth much, and it will continue to depreciate as I drive along. But then being said, if this car leaves anywhere outside my possession, it's going to go straight to the crusher because I want to keep this car on the road as much as possible. I mean, this car only has 93,000 miles on it, which is frankly very low for a car of any age, let alone one that is 30 years old. I mean, I want to keep this car on the road because it's just been such a great and pleasurable thing to keep going. It's easy to work on, it's cheap to find parts for. The wiper motor itself was 75 bucks, all 4 tires, 250, and everything is just relatively cheap and affordable. I mean, that door mirror I was telling you guys about earlier, that only cost me $15 from the local salvage yard. So I'm just really happy with this car, and I do want to continue to make this thing shine like a diamond. So that brings me on to one thing. I mentioned to you guys earlier that I was thinking about wrapping up the entire car, and if you guys have any colors in mind, because I am colorblind, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section, because I definitely want to hear some input from you. But at the same time, I know it's going to cost me a pretty penny to keep this car on the road, and I do know that I will never see that money again, but that is okay with me. I'm willing to sacrifice it because of just how good this car has been to me. Now, if it would kept breaking down all the time, or to the point where it just left me stranded more than 3 to 4 or 5 times a year, I would not be even trying it. But because it was not the car's fault that left me stranded at that car repair shop in Ravenna, but it was more so the car repair shop's fault, the car's fault, I don't think it is fair to say that that car left me stranded, because the shop left me stranded. So all in all, this car has never left me stranded in the near 2 years I have owned it, and that is frankly astonishing. But I do know I have to get some things done on it, because as of right now, I don't feel comfortable driving it out of state, especially with that ginormous crack in the windshield. So if you guys have any other ideas that you want to see me do with this car, feel free to jot them also down in the comment section. And if you want to see more of this vehicle, feel free to like, share, subscribe for more content from McElroy's Motors, and I'll have more videos coming along soon.